Okay, with the blades, tail, and canopy off, the next thing to do is to remove the skids off the bottom, and with the skids the foreign one will also come off, and we'll have to remove some wires there too. So what we do first is remove the 4 little Phillips screws that hold the skids on, and these are exactly the same as the ones for the tail, so don't worry about mixing them up. On some of the older Lamas, they were a different thread between the skids and the tail, but on the newer ones, this one is one of the 2.4s, they're exactly the same, so it doesn't make any difference. I have to try and remember to keep my big paws out of the way so you can see what I'm doing on the tape and not just look at the back of my hands. You can tell that I'm an old fart because I refer to it as a tape. I keep forgetting the new stuff is video. So now with the 4 Phillips screws that hold the skids on, the skid is ready to drop off, but these side panels are sticky and they'll stick to the sides of the skids too, so you just have to pull them back a little bit and the skid will release. And you'll notice that the wires going to the foreign one are still being held back with the chassis and the motors. So we have to pull those wires off, but the first thing that you want to do before you remove them is mark the top one so you know where to put them back on, otherwise it's going to drive you crazy trying to figure it back out. And believe me, if you get these mixed up, the Lama isn't going to fly. It will do lots of other interesting things, but it'll never get off the ground. So I just put a little T there so I know that's the top one. Now if you notice, the bottom one has 2 of the wire connectors exposed here. You see these little metal pieces. That's how you know that's the bottom one. And you want to notice that the top one is reversed. It doesn't have the 2 little wire connectors showing here. So with the top one marked, when we go to put it back together, we can put the top one in without the metal connector showing, and then when we put the bottom one in, we have to make sure and have those out. And they just pull right off. And then when you look at the other side, these are the connectors that go to the servos. And once again, you want to mark the top one so that you know which is which. And I just use an X-Acto blade and just scratch a little mark in there. This happens to be the 2.4, which is the newest Lama with a 2.4 megahertz transmitter and receiver. And you'll notice that this particular foreign one with the 2.4 has an additional lead, an LED on this side, and it has 3 additional receiver outputs. That would be very handy. Unfortunately, the transmitter is only a 4-channel and only puts out 2 channels to the servers, so only 2 of the 5 receiver outputs here can actually be used on this. At this point, that's all the farther that you have to go. If you were going to modify the skids or replace the skids, then you have to pry the foreign one off of here. It's just held on by some double-sided sticky tape. So we'll set that aside. Now normally, the only time you would have to go past this point is if you manage to break the inner shaft or the outer shaft. Unfortunately, that happens quite frequently, so I'm going to go ahead and show you how to remove both of those. The first step is to remove the inner shaft, which is the skinniest one, and the inner shaft is the one that is driven by the bottom gear here. So the first thing that we have to do to get it out is remove the fastening from the inner shaft to the gear. And the way we do that, there's a collar. This collar right here has 2 set screws in it, and those set screws are what hold the collar to the shaft. So we take our Phillips and remove the set screws, and they're in there fairly tight. Now you don't have to pull the screw all the way out. In fact, I usually don't, because I don't want to lose that little screw. So we unscrew the first one, rotate the collar, loosen up the second one, and once they're loosened up, if you grab the top blade mount here and put a finger on the gear so the gear doesn't rotate, you can just wiggle that top shaft right out. So this is the inner shaft, and you want to make sure that it's straight. If this is bent at all, especially if it's bent enough that you can actually see it looking at it like this, it's going to have to be replaced. Some guys are lucky enough to be able to straighten that shaft, but my experience has been once it's bent, it's nearly impossible to straighten. And the metal part of the shaft is glued into the plastic top. Now, later on, when you want to get into modding the Lamas, it is possible to remove the shaft from the plastic head by force, and then you can use a metal head and a longer shaft, and we'll get into that later. If you've broken excuse me, if you've broken the mount here for the fly bar, then you're going to have to replace the whole shaft and the mount up here. When you do that, remember